All right, so not having the energy to study is one of the biggest things I know students struggle with. You come home from school, it's been a long day, and you have all this work that you plan to do this evening, and when it comes to it, you just don't have the energy, you just don't have the motivation, you don't feel like doing this work. And so, as someone who's got straight A pluses for 3.5 years now in my studies in engineering, this is something that I used to struggle with a lot, but over the course of my time in university, over the course of the past few years, it's something I've developed. And while I haven't perfected the art of always having the energy to do the work, but it is something that I've made a lot of progress on. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. All right, so quickly, I just want to talk about how it used to be for me, because I used to always struggle with having the energy, not having the energy to do the work. So if we go back 3 years ago, I didn't really have a good understanding of my energy levels. So, sometimes I would sleep in, I'd be tired during the day, I would wake up, I'd waste the morning. Sometimes I'd feel like doing schoolwork, sometimes I wouldn't feel like doing schoolwork, and as a result, sometimes I would get the work done and sometimes I wouldn't. And altogether, I remember many nights going to bed and thinking to myself, all day, I was telling myself, I don't have the energy to do this work. I don't have the energy to do this practice test that I said I was going to do. I don't have the energy to do this assignment that I said I was going to do. I don't have the energy to do this reading that I said I was going to do. And so I'd be telling myself these things all day. You don't have the energy. You don't have the energy. You don't have the energy. And at the end of the day, I'm just feeling so bad about how little I accomplished, how, stressed I am because I have all this work that I didn't do, and altogether just it being a very negative experience. Now, if we flash forward 3 years to now, I'm still not perfect. I still don't have the perfect, ability to always have the energy to do the work, okay? And I don't think anybody does. But what I have done, what I have, developed is the ability to take advantage of and to manipulate my energy levels throughout the day so that I can end the day feeling actually fulfilled with the things that I've done, fulfilled with how I've spent my time. And that leads to the first insight I want you to take from this video, and that is that you need to understand your energy levels. Your energy levels, they fluctuate throughout the day. Sometimes you're gonna have energy to do work. Sometimes you're not gonna have energy to do the work. And so, many people, right, they go to school in the morning, they are at school all day, they come home and, it's 4, 5, 6 p.m., and they try to sit down and they try to do work and they just can't, okay? And when you think about this, right, it's kind of normal. Why would you expect to have the energy to sit down and do, let's say, 2 hours of work if you've just been doing work all day at school, or if you just, spent all this energy all day at school, right? And so you need to understand your energy levels. You're probably gonna have a little dip in your energy levels once you come back from school because you've just spent, an extended period of time activating your brain, or you just spent an extended period of time out of the house doing something that definitely doesn't recharge your energy. It probably is something that takes your energy, right? And so it's important to understand that at this time, this 4, 5, 6 p.m., whenever you get back from school, this is probably going to be a time that is low energy for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is a good time for you to get your work done. Maybe this is a time that is productive for you. But for many people, it's probably not. And so you want to understand just when these low energy, times of the day are going to be for you. And also you want to understand and take advantage of when these high energy times of the day are going to be for you. So for myself and for many people, I find that, getting up in the morning and getting some work done right away is a time when I have high energy, right? When I wake up, I do a few things, and at this time of day, I haven't spent any time, I haven't spent any energy, I haven't spent any of my focus or my brain on other aspects, on other things in my life yet. And so I have the ability to sit down and get a good quality session of work done, right? I have the energy at this time. But at other times in the day, let's say 2, 3, 4 hours from now, okay? I've just spent a few hours doing work, and my energy during this time is slowly dipped, right? And so maybe it's like noon, 1 o'clock at this point, and now I don't really have the energy to do work. I've just spent a bunch of my brain, I've just spent a bunch of my focus, my energy to do these things, to do this work, and now that energy is gone, okay? Which makes sense because it's been spent. And so instead of like whining and saying, I don't have the energy to do work at this time, I can't do this, instead of doing that, I just say, hey, this is not a time where I work best. This time of the day, usually my energy is a little bit lower. I'm not really able to sit down and get good quality work done. So I'm gonna use this time to go and do something else. And so, midday, that's usually when I'll end up going to the gym or something, okay? And so just understanding which time of the day is good for you to get work done, which time of the day is bad for you to get work done. When you just understand this, okay? This is when you're going to be able to perform a lot better, because not only are you doing work during the times that are productive for you, and doing the work in the times that you have the energy to do the work, you're also not wasting your time trying to do the work during the times that are going to be ineffective, right? You're not wasting for myself, I'm not wasting that, block from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock trying to get work done after I just spent 4 hours doing work or 3 hours doing work, whatever it is. I'm not wasting that time trying to do more work because I know, hey, I already did a bunch of work in the morning. I already, that was my productive time. Now I'm going to go to the gym because now I know that any work done during this time, any attempt at work done during this time is not going to be the most effective use of time because this is not the best time that I work. I don't work well during this time. And if I do try to sit down and push through this, that's just going to affect my ability to do any other, it's going to affect my energy levels for any future work that I'm going to try to get done during the day, right? Let's say I spend a couple hours of work in the morning and then I go to the gym and I'm planning on doing a couple more hours of work later, okay? Let's say I skip the gym and I try to push through and get even more work done because I just want to have this really productive day, okay? That work is not going to be as productive because it's during a time that's not as productive for me. It's during a time that I don't have as much energy. It's also going to, sap and not allow me to recharge my energy to do the work during the time where I usually do have the energy a little bit later in the day. So understanding this, understanding your energy levels, understanding when you can do work well, when you can't do work well. When is the best time? When do I have the energy to go to the gym? When do I have the energy to do this task? When do I have the energy to do this certain task, all right? During the day, your energy is going to fluctuate, all right? It goes up and down. It's going to be different for every person, right? Some people, maybe the morning isn't when they have the energy. Maybe it's actually the night, okay? And so for that person, maybe the hours where they get good quality work done is like, 7 till 9 p.m. or something, okay? But you need to understand what are these hours for you? What are the times for you where you have this energy, right? Because when you say you have no energy to work, it's probably unlikely that you never have any energy to work. It's probably likely that, there's certain times during the day where you try to sit down and work that you don't have energy. And maybe that's the time that you usually sit down. Or maybe you usually come home from school and you try to sit down at 5 p.m. and you don't have the energy. And then you do that every day. And so as a result, you think you never have the energy, when in reality, it's just you don't really have the energy at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. whenever you try to sit down, okay? So understanding your energy levels is really important because it allows you to work around the times where you will get ineffective work done, to work around the times when your energy levels are lower and constrain your working hours to the few hours a day where you're able to get this deep, good work done, right? Because realistically, there is a limit to the amount of quality work done that you can do in a day, right? And that limit is probably somewhere from, 3 to 6 hours. Of course, you can do more work than this, but it's not going to be that same level, okay? It's not going to be that same quality. And so realistically, we're just trying to look for the few hours a day, where you can put your working hours so that you can take advantage of these energy levels so that you can get this deep quality work done during this time. You're also going to be doing it at a time where you have the high energy, so you're going to be able to do it faster, you're going to have better quality, and then you have all the other time in the day to spend how you'd like. Now that does bring me to my next point, and that is that you need to be wise with how you're spending your energy, right? I was saying earlier how at the start of the day I have a pretty high energy, and then as I, progress through my first block of work that I do during the day, the energy gets lower, lower, and lower, right? And so that's because you're spending the energy. You need to understand that your energy is finite, and so you need to be aware of how you're spending it, right? So let's say, you have, let's call it 100 energy to start the day, okay? Understand that every action you do takes away some amount of energy, right? So let's say, you start your day, you wake up, and immediately you grab your phone and you scroll on Instagram for 20 minutes, okay? That took some element of energy, that took some element of focus. And so all of a sudden, instead of starting the day with 100 energy, okay, now we're at 95. And then let's say you go and check the news, okay? And so your brain is now thinking and processing, what you saw in the news. And so now all of a sudden, instead of being at 95 energy, okay, you're down to 85, okay? And then you go to school, okay, and you sit through one lecture, you sit through 2 lectures, okay? That took some element of energy, that took some element of focus. And it probably drained your energy to some amount, to some degree, right? And so now you're sitting at 45 energy, okay? And then you go home and you're kind of tired, so you scroll for another 30 minutes, and now you're at 35 energy, okay? And so all the things that you've been doing throughout the day, all the things that have demanded some element of focus has been taking some amount of energy, okay? And now the time comes, it's 4 p.m., 5 p.m., this is the time you set aside to do your big work task for the day. This is the time you set aside to do this practice test. This is the time you set aside to do this assignment, to write this paper, to do whatever it is that you have to do for school, okay? That task is probably a fairly difficult task. It probably has some large element of focus, some large element of energy. And so maybe it takes 40 energy to complete, okay? But because of how you spent your day before this, you only have 35 energy left. And so you physically, you cannot complete the task that you set out to complete. You cannot complete the task that you told yourself that you wanted to do, the big assignment, the big project that you wanted to do, that you told yourself you were going to do earlier, okay? And so what do you do with your time? Well, you don't have enough energy to do the task, so you probably do the thing that you do have enough energy to do, which is to procrastinate the task. Maybe you go and do some small other, work that really isn't that important. Maybe you check your emails. Maybe you get caught up and you watch a TV show, you watch Netflix, or, you go on social media, because those are the only things that you have the energy for. Those are the only things that you have enough, brain points. Those are the only things that you have enough focus to do. And so all of a sudden, you have this few hours in the evening that you set aside to do work, but because you've already spent all the energy throughout the day, you don't have enough time to do the quality work that you set out to do. And so as a result, you usually have this unproductive evening that also wasn't very enjoyable because you plan to do work, and so you're trying to do work, but you can't, you don't really have the energy, you don't really have the focus, and altogether it's just not an enjoyable experience. And so this really shows how important it is to understand that your energy is finite and you cannot be spending it on everything that's not important to you, on these things that aren't, the work that you want to complete, B, something that is fulfilling for you, C, something that is bringing you closer towards your goals. If it's not something like this, if it's not something, any of those things, or if it's not something you fully enjoy, then we can't be spending our energy on it. We can't be spending our focus on it, because it takes away our ability to spend the energy on the things that we actually want to do. And so again, you just need to be really aware that your energy is finite. So how do you deal with this then, right? Because if you only have a limited amount of energy, there's many things throughout the day that are going to take that away, right? The biggest key is to stack your important tasks early on during the day, right? Because if you have a task that takes 40 energy, and let's say you only start with 200, okay? Well, if you spend all the energy throughout the day, you come to the end of the day, you're not going to have enough energy to do that task. But if you do it right away, if you do that task right away, okay, that's fine, right? Because you have that 200 energy to start the day. And so if you do the first big task, well, that takes 40 energy. Okay, that's fine. We're down to 160. You do another one, that's fine. We're down to 120. You still have, this much left, right? You still have a lot of energy left that can take you through those smaller tasks throughout the day. But we're able to do this because we started with the big tasks. We checked those off early, so you're not left with no energy to complete them come the end of the day. You don't want to end your day, go to bed and feel bad about how your day was spent. You don't want to feel bad about, accomplishing nothing during the day, or not feeling fulfilled, or not feeling good about how your time was spent, right? You want to go to bed feeling good about the work you completed, fulfilled about the things you did, right? This is how you want to go to bed. But the only way to do that is to have the energy to do these important things, to do these things that fulfill you, to complete the work that you want to do, which you won't have if you're wasting your energy, if you're spending your energy on other things. So you need to be spending time, allotting energy early on in the day for these things that are good for you. Now, also, I already said that many of the things that you do are going to take away energy from you. You sit through a lecture, okay, that's minus 20. All right, you did this assignment, that's minus 20. You go on social media, that's minus 5. Okay, most things are going to take away energy, but there's probably a few things that you can do that are going to increase your energy, okay? And so you can use these throughout the day to, get these little boosts in order to get that little bit of extra energy to do other tasks, to have enough energy to, sit down for another hour in the evening and maybe get a little bit more work done, okay? And so what these things are vary from person to person, but examples would be, going outside for a walk, all right? That is probably something that when you come back, you'll have a little bit more energy, you'll feel a little bit more refreshed, and you can use that to go and do whatever you want to do. Use that energy that you've gained from that activity, from that walk. You can use that energy, carry that into your work, or carry that into whatever it is that you're working on, right? Another example, okay? For me, it's the gym, all right? When I go to the gym during the middle of the day, I usually come back and I'm feeling re-energized to get back to more work. And so there's different things that, you can do to re-energize you, right? But you want to be aware of a few things that aren't, because a lot of people will say, hey, I'm just going to relax for a little bit. I'm going to scroll on social media, or I'm going to sit down and, watch this TV show. And to that, I would say that most of the time after you do those things, you don't feel any more energized. You don't feel any more compelled to get back to work, to get back working on whatever it is that is important to you, right? That very rarely happens, okay? And so that, scrolling on social media, watching Netflix, watching a TV show, whatever it is, okay? These things aren't as refreshing as you think, all right? These things aren't as relaxing as you think, because if they were relaxing, well, they should, provide you with more energy to get back and to do the other things in your life that you want to, right? If chilling out and going on social media was relaxing, then every time after you laid on the couch for an hour, scrolled on Instagram, you should be feeling good and you should be feeling energized, but you don't. You feel like terrible because of how you spend your time. So these activities that you think are relaxing or you think are refreshing or providing you with energy, they're probably not. Okay, there's very few activities that actually do provide you with energy to carry back through the day. And some of them are what you think, maybe taking a nap, okay? Maybe going for a walk, going outside. Of course, these things are there too. But you know what also probably brings you more energy to get back to work? Maybe seeing your friends, okay? Maybe it's going for like a lunch, okay? These things, all right? These breaks from work, these like social interactions, they probably do provide you with energy that you can carry back into your work. And so, you need to be aware of the things that do and the things that don't provide you with more energy. The things that do provide a little bit of refreshment, that do provide a little bit of relaxation or whatever it is, okay? But understand that they're probably not the things that you are accustomed to. They're probably not, winding down for an hour before you go to sleep by watching TV. And it's probably more like, going to step outside and get some fresh air or picking up a book or maybe calling a friend, okay? But it's probably not, the Instagram, the Netflix, the whatever else you use as an excuse for relaxation. It's probably not any of those things. And so again, the goal is to end your day feeling well and fulfilled with how your time was spent. It's to accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish. It's to spend the time with the people you wanted to spend your time with. It's to, exercise. It's to do all the things you want to do. But if you want to do it all, you need to be wary of how you're spending your time. You need to be cautious with how you're spending your time, and you need to recharge thoughtfully, not mindlessly, okay? So your energy is finite. You need to be spending it well. Now, the last point I have is also kind of to do with recharging your energy, all right? And that is sleep, okay? Because like I said, you have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of energy to spend during the day, okay? But when is that energy recharged? That's during your sleep, okay? And so good sleep is a superpower, because if you sleep good, all right, you're gonna be starting the day with like 200, 250 energy. And if you sleep bad, if you only get a few hours of sleep, okay, you're only gonna be starting the day with like 50 energy. And so of course, you get to the end of a long day, end of work, end of school, whatever it is, okay? You better believe you're not going to be having the energy to do anything else if you only started the day with 50 energy instead of somebody who started the day with 250, 300 energy, okay? And so the best thing to do if you want to have the energy to do things is the one thing that we all know that provides us with more energy, and that is to sleep, okay? Now, not only are you starting the day with that extra energy, okay, you're also starting the day a little bit smarter, a little bit more, aware, a little bit more sharp, making better decisions because you had that better sleep. Sleep is also where your hormones are optimized. If you're a guy, this is where you make your testosterone, right? And so, having that healthy amount is going to just push you even further and further to want to do the work, to take more joy in the work, to want to compete, to want to do well in these things. All of these things are going to, give you that energy, give you that drive to want to do the work, right? To want to go to the gym, to want to, build your best self for your relationships, for all these other aspects of your life, okay? And so sleep is one of the most important things that you can look after. Also, the healthiest version of you is just going to be the version of you most willing to do the work, that will have the most energy to do the work that you want to do. So be aware of that, okay? Because if you're always staying up to just squeeze out that little bit of extra work, it might not be worth it, all right? It might not be worth it because it's going to affect your energy levels for the future, for the next day, for the next day after that, right? A couple hours at the end of the day when your energy is already so low, if you're trying to spend this working, all right, it may not be as advantageous as you think. You might get a little bit of extra work done, that's true, all right? And if you have a deadline the next day, well, it's a necessity, it's something you need to do. But if you're thinking in the long run, if we're thinking, in the grand scheme of things, then it's not going to be as worth it, all right? It's going to be worth it to prioritize your sleep, all right? You don't need to be studying until midnight. You don't need to be studying until 2 a.m., all right? Unless this is the schedule that you're on. The better thing to do is just to prioritize your sleep, because the sleep is where you're going to recharge your energy for the next day to be able to come back stronger, all right? So if the goal is to, have enough energy to do work, okay, then sometimes you need to ironically, put the work aside for a little bit, prioritize the sleep, okay, so that you can come back and have that energy the next day, to have that full productive next day, all right, than if you semi-productive, not really productive hours the night before, okay? So prioritize your sleep. Good sleep is a superpower. Like I said, you get 4 hours of sleep, you're gonna be starting the day with like 50 energy. You get 8 hours of sleep, okay, you're starting with like 200, okay? It's something worth prioritizing, okay? And so once you get your sleep on track, once you have been on this for a week and you've been really strict on your schedule and you've been really consistent, okay? you're going to start seeing results. You're going to start feeling the difference. In the end of the day, you're going to be feeling that little bit better. You're going to have that little bit extra energy that you can take in and do the things that you want to do.